This whole list of tips, tricks, and techniques that would have shaved 10 years off my career and made me a whole lot more money. If you don't know where you're starting, you don't know where you're going, you have no chance of getting there. It's just not possible because of how the brain works. A proper outline essentially removes one of the big causes of writer's block, which is not knowing your starts and your endings. And on top of it sounding like the least sexy topic because it's so unsexy, nobody tells anybody how to outline ideas. You're using your biology to work for you rather than against you. It's a really simple process. This is how the brain likes to work. This is how the brain likes to learn. This is how the brain is most effectively creative. This is just my way of saying, hey, look, this is how I learned how to do it. Would you please help take this and make more books? Because I love books. Hey, this is Stephen Kotler. I'm a journalist, I'm an author, and I'm the executive director of the Flow Research Collective. And as an author, I've written 12 best-selling books. I've been nominated for 2 Pulitzer Prizes. As a journalist, I've written for pretty much every major publication in America, well over 100 publications. And what I want to walk you through in this video is just a fantastic outlining process that I use. And what this process is going to do for you is, first of all, it's going to make you a much more deadly effective communicator. It's also going to help prevent writer's block for you, and it's actually going to speed up your writing process. And this is applicable if you're interested in writing books, articles, reports, blogs, kind of across the board. So that's what we're going to do over the next 20 minutes or so. One of the coolest kind of tools and techniques that sort of came out of it was this idea. So it's writing. Writing is a narrative. It's a story. A happens, B happens, C happens. And how you start to put that together, the place to start is with an outline, which is sounds like the least sexy topic. And on top of it sounding like the least sexy topic because it's so unsexy, nobody tells anybody how to outline ideas. And the reason why would you care, who cares about outlining? A couple of different reasons. So I always like to say in the Flow Research Collective, we are always pointing out to people that a lot of what we mean by peak performance is getting your biology to work for you rather than against you. And one of the fundamental things, 2 things about the brain that are really important to know for this. One, it's a goal-directed system. The brain has sort of 2 big drives, right? 2 big filters for all information that comes through. The first filter is fear, because it's trying to keep you alive. And the second filter are goals. Where do you want to go? The brain does goal direction. Oh, you want to get here? I'll figure out how to get you there. It does that great. It does that automatically. And how it does that automatically is through pattern recognition, the connection of ideas together. So pattern, or the connection of anything together. Pattern recognition is what neurons do at a really fundamental, basic level. That's essentially what most neurons do. This is how vision works. This is how hearing works. This is how we think. This is what brains do at a really basic level. So here's the cool thing about an outline. An outline is, hey, this is where I'm going to start, and this is where I'm going to end, and here's a couple way stations along the way, right? That's just a loose sketch, like a vector diagram. But this is where I want to start, and this is where I'm going to end, and these are the 2 points I want to make along the way. If you can even just get that much down on paper, the brain will automatically start to stitch it together. It's pattern recognition. It's cause and effect. Story starts here. This happens, and this is our ending, right? The brain will fill in the details. It will start to flesh out the outline for you into the actual content. It will do some of the hard creative lifting for you. So a proper outline saves you a ton of time that way. A bonus. B bonus is that a proper outline essentially removes one of the big causes of writer's block, which is not knowing your starts and your endings. If you don't know where you're starting, you don't know where you're going, you have no chance of getting there. It's just not possible because of how the brain works. So outlines, just by doing an outline, you're removing one of the big causes of writer's block. Problem with writing is if you don't know where you're starting, where you're going next, where you're going next, where you're going next, you just start to veer off. It's a little bit, it's 1 degree here, it's 2 degrees. It doesn't feel like anything when you're doing it. It's sort of like, first-time novelists do this all the time. When they're writing the first third of their book and they get stuck, they can introduce a new character or put in a plot twist, right? It's super easy. You can just come up with it. Oh, the character gets hit by the bus here, right? Okay. The problem is, by the time you're at the end of your book, something long, Well, all those little details, those little like, oh, now we're 1 degree off or 10 degrees off, right? Now, by the end of the book, you're screwed. And trust me, my first book took 11 years to write for this very reason. It is super easy to get lost in this wilderness. And what you give up, besides the fact you're going to wander all over the place, is effectiveness. You're not telling a story, you're veering off, and your readers notice. In a book, you do this 1 degree off on page 1, it's another degree on page 2. By the time you're on page 270, you're just screwed. There's no way to get it back, and it's a mess. But what people don't realize is the same thing is true for sure in a magazine, like a long form magazine article, 5,000 words long, or a long report you're writing for work. For sure, 1 to 2 degree errors in the beginning are going to compound by the ending. You're going to be off your point. So the whole point of writing, you want to communicate, you want it to be effective, you want to sort of punch the reader in the mouth at some point with your point when you get there. But if you keep veering off, right, you're losing that impact, you're losing that effectiveness. And the same thing happens even in something really short, 1,000-word blog, right? 1,000, which is supposed to take like one idea and communicate it. And most blogs, so here's the interesting thing, like most blogs are like 300-word ideas, right? It's introduction, 300 words of an idea, 300 words that build on an idea, conclusion. That's a blog. That's most every blog, most everybody writes. But if you set up your introduction, you're transitioning into your first bit of content, and it's like 2 degrees off there, and that same happens to the next transition, and the same happens at the bottom. 6 degrees off, 7 degrees off, doesn't feel like much. But you've got me for 800 words. Like if you're not dead on target and punching me in the mouth with the message at the end, if you're just a little off, well, I notice, and you're less effective. And guess what? These other bloggers that I could go read, they're not less effective. They go straight through, and they always get the emotional payoff I want at the end of something. Oh, I learned something, it made me feel something cool. I'm a little different. I spent my time wisely, right? And if you're not on message, that goes away. So outlines get you to work in accordance with your biology in a really cool way, and they serve 2 problems at once. And I always like to say that with peak performance, you see this with elite performers, the world best of the best, they're busy. They're too busy to solve problems one at a time. Peak performance at the elite level, you have to look for multi-tool solutions. I need a solution that is going to solve multiple problems. So simple example is mindfulness or respiration, right? A respiration, a breath practice, well, it calms down your nervous system, it trains up focus. If you do it correctly, it can train up 4 or 5 other cognitive skills, right? So you may have started to do it for stress reduction, but it turns out it has huge performance benefits on the back end. It's a multi-tool solution. So you're giving it 11 minutes a day, right, of focused breath work, and you're getting massive results that are way bigger than 11 minutes. This is one of those solutions in writing. This is something that it's really simple to do, and especially the way I'm going to lay it out, really simple to outline something. It tunes up your biology, so your biology is working for you. You're you don't have writer's block on the front end, so it's much faster. You know where you're going through as you're going through it, so it's much faster, and you're a much better, more effective communicator on the back end. And what's interesting about this is the variable in writing is style. Style is very individual, and it takes a very long time to really get great with words. It just does. It's hard to do. They're hard to work with. It's hard to learn, and you just need lap after lap after lap after lap. There are some ways to shortcut the process, and we do that at Flow for Writers, but not that many of them. So anytime you can find a multi-tool solution like this that will improve your ability to communicate, and it's not based on style, right? This thing that you sort of have to learn the hard way, oh my God, you have to, like, that should be in your arsenal immediately, because it can make an immediate difference. So outlining is one of those tools. So most people, I'm going to talk about this kind of as a book outline, because it's easier to think about this, but you can apply it anywhere. Most people don't even outline their books, and you're dead if you don't. I'll write a 2,000 word or 1,000 word. This is an overview. This is my overview. And then I'll go chapter by chapter. What's in each chapter, right? Level 1, layer 1 is the obvious. It's the data dump. Everything I could possibly think of in my brain that I might want to shove into my book. And the only thing I'm really doing at this point is saying, okay, books have, 10 chapters, and they're 5,000 words each, which is about average, or a little under. So let's say books have 5 chapters or 10 chapters and there's 7,000 words each, which gets you to 70,000 words, which is an average book. Okay, if I look at that, everything that I can kind of fit into that chapter in that frame, every story I might want to tell, every point I want to make, blah, 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 that's layer 1. And it's just what I want to do is I want to get as much out as I possibly can. I want as much raw material to start with. So 3 layers to an outline. Layer 1, just vomit out the ideas, right? Layer 2 is you're taking your vomit and you're turning it into what you're going to remember from high school as the 5-paragraph essay, right? The 5-paragraph essay basically says, here's my story or my introduction, right? Here's the cool story I want to tell you that's going to illustrate my points. So I'll start with what's the big story kind of thing, and then what are the 3 or 4 main points? And I always got to remember, readers we all have working memory, right? And our working memory is short-term memory, so we're going to hold on to it once. So if you're reading sort of like one section of a paragraph or one section of a chapter, that's, sort of all of the ideas you can hold. Most people tap out. Maximum capacity is 7 plus or minus 2, but that's for like numbers and digits and easy thing to remember things. When it's ideas, most people tap out around 4 ideas. And so that's why the 5-paragraph essay structure works so well. Introduction, idea, and a big conclusion that's built out of those 3 ideas, because that's what your working memory can hold. So again, you're writing in accordance with your biology. So when a second level of my outline is sort of like, what's my big story? And then what are my 3 major points? And usually under each of those points, there's probably going to be a few subpoints, right? So that's all I'm going for. First phase, vomit. Second phase is the 5-paragraph essay. And so this is where most people stop. Even most people who know what they're doing, this is the last version. Oh, I've vomited it out onto the page, and now I've organized it in a way that I think I can effectively communicate it. And that's where people stop. Let's say I've got 10 chapters in my book. My first round of the outline, my chapter descriptions are probably going to be 2,000 words long. Right? So like 4 or 5 pages per chapter, because I'm going to try to tell you everything I'm going to tell you in the chapter so I can see what it looks like and what am I going to keep and what am I going to lose and all that stuff, right? So that's a long process. That takes a long time to figure out what order do I want my chapters to go in, like what comes first, what comes second, what comes third, what comes fourth, and there's all kinds of kung fu around that. That is something I go deep into in Flow for Writers. We're gonna leave that on the side right now, but there's kung fu here. There's stuff you can do there too. Second level is 5 paragraphs, and now you've got your big stories, your anchor stories, and idea, and conclusion. Cool. Most people think they're done, and they're not done, because the next layer of the outline is the transitions. How are you going to go from the introduction into idea 1? How are you going to go from idea 1 into idea 2? How are you going to go from idea 2 to idea 3? How are you going to go from idea 3 into your conclusion? How are you going to go from your conclusion into your next chapter? And transitions can often be nothing more than a sentence, but they are where most people screw writing up the most. And the problem is, it's hard to connect ideas together. And if you don't map it out ahead of time, this is where you start making those errors. So in me trying to connect my introduction, my first idea, to my second idea really seamlessly, so it builds on it for the readers, and what I want is a really tight alignment, so it just flows totally logically, so the reader doesn't ever pause and go, that doesn't track, something's right, or I don't even want them to get that at an unconscious level. I want them to be moving through to the point I want to make really cleanly and really powerfully. Or, by the way, if they're not, I want it to be intentional. If they're not, I'm doing it, they're not doing it. So if you can map your transitions, everything's stacked, and you don't have to wonder. And as you're writing, it totally will speed you up a lot. This is the hardest thing. So I always say that when I start a book, I try to write 500 words a day. That's my daily limit, right? It'll change over time, it'll grow. I think it's 500 words, and 500 words is chosen very specifically. Most ideas are about 300 words. That's a chunk of an idea, and 500 words means I have to write the transition and the start of the next idea. So I force myself to, so the next day when I come in, I'm already building on that idea, one, but it's also, there's a difficulty there that like I have to pull off the transition and it's hard. So I do a 4-hour writing session every morning from 4 in the morning to 8 o'clock. And then so if the writing session went really well, I'll leave it alone all morning, and I may do an hour or two from 1 to 2 or 1 to 3. And that's what I normally do. If I get stuck, if the first writing session was really frustrating, my books are my first priority, so I won't sort of quit. I will work all day if it's stuck and it's not working, but I don't have to do that very often. And then twice a week, sometimes 3 times a week, I work with my editor. So I have an editor I work with. I've worked with him for 25 years, and Tuesdays and Fridays from 2 to 5:30, we work together, and we'll edit everything that I've written that week, read it out loud and rework it, and that sort of thing. So the last stage, the outline, is critical because if you put in those transitions and you've preloaded it, you're not going to veer off. You're not 1 degree off. You're not 2 degrees off. You're totally tight. You know exactly where you're going. You're not going to be putting in extraneous ideas to bridge ideas together. You're going to stay completely on message. And you're not going to do, writers they get frustrated, they get lazy, so they'll do things like they'll end the paragraph with a big question, and then they go into their next thing. And, it'll work every now and again, but if that becomes your style over and over and over again, it gets really boring to read. And editors take one look at that stuff and go, oh, that's the writer being lazy. Right? And that happens all the time. It's because you didn't do the hard work to think out what your transitions were, which are often the hardest things in anything you're writing. So by thinking out them ahead of time, one, right? And even if you don't have it nailed it correctly, here's the cool thing. Your brain has been thinking about it subconsciously for a while from the outline forward, like how do I link these ideas? So by the time you get back to there, you're either going to have that or you're going to have something better. So you're using your biology to work for you rather than against you. It's a really simple process, 3 stages, and I would do it, consecutive days. You know what I mean? If it's a small thing, like I wouldn't, here's my first level, I'm gonna do it. No, I want the first one, I wanna live with it. Let my kind of brain chew on it, let it think about it and start figuring out how it works for me, and then I want to come back to it, and then I want to come back to it the next day. So you want to stretch it out over time, because the brain will, that's how your brain will do the work for you. It likes to move at that pace. So it's why I like to get out way ahead of the projects I'm working on, so the brain can kind of do its thing. I write in a very sort of similar way. I do it in layers. Layer 1, I vomit out the words, right? Same thing, same methodology. Layer 1 is vomit out the words, and what I try to get the tone right. I talk about the somatic address of writing, which is how does the writing make you feel, right? So I try to, it's really, if you get the tone wrong, if you get the wrong somatic address, like if I'm writing to make you feel grief and the piece is supposed to make you feel happy, I'm screwed later, right? Like then there's no fixing that kind of error. So you got to sort of have the emotions right or the tone right. Style doesn't have to be right. And I found that actually trying to get the style right at the front end will crush you later. Because when you lock in style, you're making a complete commitment to the idea. I'm going to start here. I'm going to write it this way. And until you vomited it out. And so, by the way, same order. Order 1, vomit it out. Order layer 2, right? Next day I vomited it out. Now I'm going to kind of structure it in. Now I'm going to be like, okay, here's my lead, here's my story, here's my point, here's my lead. Oh, this I don't need. Right? That's same process for 2. The difference is on the third pass when I be putting in the transitions in the outline, this is when I actually put in the style. That's when I start to lock down. Here's exactly how the sentences are going to sound. Here's the pacing. When I say something like pacing, short sentences, he went to the store. Move the reader through it. So if you 3-word, 4-word, 5-word sentences, that the reader will read those things very quickly. So if you want to write an action scene, nonfiction, fiction, whatever, short sentences, it speeds up the pace, right? Longer sentences slow it way down. You have to do more thinking, right? So when I talk about something like speeding up or slowing down, I'm often actually just talking about sentence length and choice and word choice, right? Anything that is super long and takes the reader, right? It's a supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. It takes the reader a while to read that, figure out what the hell it means, right? You've slowed the book way down, so you better have done that intentionally. The other thing that I think is interesting here about this process is we've been talking about writing. And this is obviously Flow for Writers, and that's what we're thinking about, that's what we're talking about. But these same kind of process ideas, they apply in every creative field, right? You can layer stuff up, you can outline, you can do these things in any creative project. I have a degree in art. I was a painter for years. You approach paintings in the same kind of way, right? This is just, you can make it your own in any art form, and it's really, creativity is really unwieldy. It's a difficult thing to wrestle with. And by the way, when I say creativity, I'm using the scientific definition of the term, which is nothing fancier than the creation of novel ideas that are useful. Right, that's what creativity is defined as. So I'm just talking about coming up with neat, cool, useful ideas. That's all we're talking about here. But it's a process. It doesn't matter. You can be an architect, you could be a dancer, you can be a writer, you can be a creative stockbroker. It doesn't matter what you are, filmmaker. These are all creative projects, but they all layer. And they all require, there's all narratives. They have starts, they have middles, they have endings. Like, all this stuff sort of works the same. Maybe you don't have to write out your transitions. Maybe you don't have to layer in your style, but this is how the brain likes to work. This is how the brain likes to learn. This is how the brain is most effectively creative. So, once again, when you start with the fundamental biological principles, you understand how it works. Oh, here's how it works. This is how it's going to work for me, right? That's the part that's always, you always got to conduct your own experiment, of course, but make it your own. Why? Because personality is individual. So if any of this was interesting to you, if it's your thing, this is really just scratching the surface of what we do at Flow for Writers, which is my deep dive into all this kind of material. And as I sort of said at the start, Flow for Writers emerged after, me realizing that this whole list of tips, tricks, and techniques that I was talking about, it would have shaved 10 years off my career and, made me a whole lot more money, wanting to kind of dump that into other people's heads. Mostly, by the way, we're saying that I love writing. Writing has given me more in my life than books have given me more in my life than anything else. So this is just my way of saying, hey, look, this is how I learned how to do it. Would you please help take this and make more books? Because I love books, right? I'm trying to carry on a tradition that I really love, and I want other people, to do great stuff with it. But Flow for Writers is a deep dive. It's live with me. It's all this stuff condensed. It has 4 parts. The first part is words, so it's the craft of writing, and it is designed to take you from idea conception phase all the way through to kind of how to write the book. So we cover everything you could possibly, we covered outlining today, we kind of talk about layering writing, we talk about how do you steal a style, so how do you actually cultivate a style, where does that come from, how do you have a voice, we talk about things like how do you be funny in writing if you want to learn how to do stuff like that, any emotion you want to produce in writing with words, we talk about how you produce different emotions, how does actual language work, the mechanics of it, cover a lot of stuff like that. The second part is on the business of writing, and here we focus on 2 things. What does an actual book proposal look like? Because what people think they look like and what agents will actually tell writers they look like is not what they're actually supposed to look like. And then we talk about what does it actually take to build a bestseller campaign? Because nobody gets lucky. Bestsellers are made, they're built, and they're built a very specific way with actually a fairly specific team of people. And if you don't have the team, you better have the time to do all this stuff for yourself. You better know about all these components, right? If you're writing for a living, you're being creative for a living, and understanding how creativity works in the brain and how to get the biology of creativity working for you rather than against you is unbelievably cool and unbelievably useful. And it's interesting, after teaching this course so many times and so many people going through it. That is the thing. Creatives it's difficult to be a creative. It's emotionally difficult to be creative. It turns out there are a lot of reasons why, and a lot of people have come through and said that section actually, like the writing stuff is great and they've produced books out of it, but that stuff actually made them feel a hell of a lot better in their life. They walked away really with a deeper understanding of themselves. That's what happened to me when I started to understand neuroscience. I was like, oh, I'm not crazy. I'm just programmed to think differently, and this is how it works. And it really helped me solve a lot of emotional stuff that I was going through, and other people seem to have that reaction too. And the last section is on flow, which, we're going to break down the neurobiology of optimal performance. We're going to specifically apply it to writing. So this is, we're going to take everything we've been doing and massively turbo boost it, right? Creativity goes up 400 to 700% in flow. So you come out the other side of flow for writers dangerous and ready to produce books. And a lot of people say I'm saving them months and years of hard work, and the quality is better on the other end. So that's what we're doing at Flow for Writers.